Hey everyone, Jay here, and welcome to your Python Lab number 4. We're going to talk about variables. What are they? What do we do with them? Variables are a place in memory where you can store some value and use it again later. That's it. That's what a variable is. They do vary. There are different types of variables. Some can get rather complex, but they are simply put a place in memory where you can store some value and use it again later. So I've got a few variables here. I've got an integer that I've created. I've got a floating point, a decimal variable, and then I have a text string of characters. This is a string of one character, but it is still a string of characters. Okay, so let's look at our program here. You're going to follow along, right? I have my three variables. I have an assignment operator for each one. I have a variable equals a value. It could be a little bit complex. It could say my value is another variable. You can do that. I could have my value be a mathematical formula. You can do that. My value could be another function or a whole nother program or something. You can do that. We're going to do this to get started. My variable is being assigned a value. In this case, it's just an integer. An integer is a number with no decimal point. You need to know that. Next is my float. That is a number that has a decimal point and some number of decimals afterwards. Maybe 0 decimals. Maybe you did some math in it and it worked out and it's a whole number again, aka an integer. It's still a floating point because, and especially depending on what programming language you use, it's going to store these variables in a different sized bucket in memory based on what type of variable it is. So it's pretty important to know what type you're using all the time, not only for just the memory space that it goes into, but also if you're going to do some math with it, you don't want to have letters on one side and numbers on the other side and try and multiply them. That don't work. So you need to know what variable type you have at all times. Okay, so we're going to add to these. One of these is a little different. One of these is not a number, right? So my first one, I'm adding 2 to 0. I should get 2, right? In the end. And you can see the output already here at the bottom. I've got it running. And my second one, I'm adding 1. And look at the way I'm adding. I'm using a shortcut to add. I'm saying my int plus equals 2, which means I'm going to add 2 and assign it to the value kind of all in one step. It's still not one step for the computer, but it's one step for us, right? Could say my int equals my int plus 2, right? Could say that. Probably what I should say, because right? It's easier to understand. So my int equals my int plus 2. My float plus equals 1. Same thing. Let's make that 2. Let's make that even more the same. Okay, these two are the exact same thing, except one of them is working on this variable and one of them is working on that variable. They're otherwise the same. Okay, and the last one, my text equals, let's say, there we go. Let's do that. Now, if I were to get rid of that space and add those together, I wouldn't have a space in there. I need to put that space in myself. The computer is not going to do it for me. There are cases where the computer will put spaces in places that you don't necessarily want them. We'll get to that pretty soon, actually. But I need to put this in there myself. And you'll also notice that when we take two strings and we use a plus sign to stick them together, we're not actually adding them. I'm not saying what is J plus Niihawk and try and combine those together. What we're actually doing is concatenating them. Computer knows that's what concatenation is. That's what you're supposed to do with strings. So it's putting them together as if 1 plus 1 equals 11, okay? A string plus a string equals two strings stuck to each other, okay? It knows that. Let's save this and run it again. Make sure I didn't introduce any bugs here on accident. I did not. It's the same. Except I did change this 1 to a 2. Okay. So I have created some variables. I've modified some variables. Now let's output some variables. Okay, I'm using the print command, and each of these print commands, let's look at one at a time. Each of these is doing two things. Actually, I have one here for you. All right, so I'm just printing my integer right here. That's it. Print my int, and it'll do that. If I run that, that's it right there. We'll just print my int by itself down here. See down there? No problem at all. But what I want to do is also show you what type that variable is as well. And so I'm using the command type within the print command. You can do this. Right? So I'm going to print two things with each print command. Print the type of my integer, comma. This is how I separate the two things. These are both called arguments now. I'm giving an argument, or I'm providing a parameter to the print command or the print function, and you separate those with a comma. Okay. And so the second one is the integer. So I'm saying print what is the type of my integer, followed by what is the value of my integer. Okay. The type followed by the value. And you can see in the output right here, I get class of type int followed by 2. The next one is class of type float followed by 2.123456789, and then class of type str, which means string, and the value is my name. So that's it. That's this lab. Okay, if you've been following along, or if you haven't, either way, copy all this down, put your name in there, and turn it in. That's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.